Hello, everyone. I'm Haley Hansen. I'm a partner at Husch Blackwell in the Kansas City office, and I lead the higher education team here at Husch. Before we begin, I'd like to take a few minutes to cover some housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console, there are multiple applications for your use today. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them via the question box, and Chuck and I will try to answer as many questions as we can today. However, if a fuller answer is needed, we will go ahead and email you if time runs out. Also, there is a PDF of the presentation that is available in the program materials folder. So you're welcome to download that. And then finally, you'll get a certificate of attendance for attending today that will be emailed to you tomorrow with a link to the recording of the webinar, and you're welcome to share that on your campuses. Towards the end of the program, be sure to complete a short survey too. We really appreciate any feedback you have, especially as we're talking about the new tool, Campus Compass. That's it for housekeeping items, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be discussing the launch of Husch Blackwell Consulting and a new product called Campus Compass. And with me today is Dr. Chuck Ambrose. And Dr. Ambrose has been in college president's offices for 40 years. I'm dating you a bit, Chuck. There we go. Yep. And a college president for 23 years before I luckily hired him away to come and help us with Campus Compass and launching our Husch Blackwell Consulting. So Chuck supports educational institutions and their leaders with student-centered focus, helping them to access and utilize tools to build a sustainable future for higher ed. So very happy to have you with me today, Chuck. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start today. Our topic is now is the time to secure your institution's future, and we're going to give you a demo of what Campus Compass does. But the first thing we'd like to do is just ask you a poll question. So we're going to ask you, how confident are you about the future of the higher education industry? Are you A, very optimistic, somewhat optimistic, neutral, or somewhat concerned or very concerned? So we'll give you a minute just to pick that, unless I need to go forward one. See it going yet? Oh, we'll go back. Okay, two have submitted, sorry. Went too quickly. Just give it a couple more seconds.
Do we get to answer?
You get to answer too. All right, we've got about half of you that have answered now. All right, let's see what our results are. So somewhat optimistic, oh good, is at least 30%. We have somewhat concerned is the winner of 61.5%, and some are very concerned as well. So I think that's one of the reasons that we decided to do something different and launch a new line of service within, again, Husch Blackwell is the law firm, is the owner of Husch Blackwell Consulting. But as we were looking at the challenges that are really facing higher education, we thought a new type of service may be necessary. So Chuck, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the challenges.
Yeah, and to be on a webinar in August of 24, thinking about the challenges, as many of you are starting school, you've lived through a year that's been defined by changes in the FAFSA, concerns really systemically about higher education at the industry level, and then many of the structural deficits. It would just really take time and probably weigh on all of our shoulders if we just focused on what we see in the news every week. It doesn't matter if it's the Chronicle briefings, Inside Higher Ed, Higher Education Dive. And, this first slide really is more of current state, right? The structural deficits, really, as we think about it today, the problems we're trying to solve for. The second slide really thinks forward with the predictions. And as you know, many have gone back to Clayton Christensen's original predictions. I would say much of the challenge is to kind of forestall some of the worst predictions and maybe restate the value of higher education, where we beat the pundits, right? Because it's challenging. no doubt. And I think your poll responses would indicate you have to have a healthy amount of optimism in what college really means to students. At the same time, recognize the problems that you're trying to solve for. And again, it would be of no stranger to say that we are sailing in strong headwinds. How do we get through the eye of the storm? And then how do we create a future that's sustainable? And I think creating that future gets to be the exciting and dynamic part of what's next.
So why don't you ask the next poll question, Chuck?
Which leads you, right? Again, critical weeks, we have to express our appreciation for you joining us today because many of you have started school last week or in the first week of classes. Some of you are just welcoming students to campus this week, but let's get focused on you. Campus Compass is meant to be a customized set of tools to help you answer the critical questions. So we'd just like to ask, how confident are you in the future of your institution as you reflect on that first question about putting your institution in context of the industry? So we'll give you a few minutes to answer that question.
It's kind of a hard one to answer. That's
it is.
Sure.
Well, and as you think about it, there's what you hope, right, is the status, and then some recognition of where you really are today. And so, again.
Okay, so let's go ahead and share the results with you then. So, oh, good. We have a little of all the areas.
And again, it's about balance, right? Mm-hmm. Just recognizing, again, the questions we should be answering. Some of them are hard questions, without doubt. Some of them are how you translate that optimism into opportunity. And again, that's why we're glad you joined us today.
All right, so coming alongside colleges and universities. So let's really talk about Campus Compass and what does it? What does it do? How does it help institutions? And I think just to really set the stage, this is an idea that I had about 2.5 years ago, I would say, because a lot of my clients, Husch Blackwell, the law firm, represents over 300 colleges and universities across the country, and they were coming to us, especially smaller schools with smaller populations of students that were wondering, what is our trajectory? And we can talk about the legal aspects of it, but didn't really have the data or the information to be able to talk about all the other aspects of your institutional health. And a lot of times, the one thing that I really saw over and over again is that there was a lot of metrics when it came to financial health, but that didn't necessarily give you the big picture. So maybe it was the composite score from the Department of Education or your accreditor score. And that still didn't give you the overall picture of your institution's resilience, your sustainability, how you're going to move forward. And so really Campus Compass was created as a customized diagnostic tool, and it does use IPEDS data, and it was designed really in a way to try to show institutions your trends. And Chuck's really going to get into the meat of what this is, but really to be able to say in a lot of different areas, here's where we're doing a pretty good job, and here's where we're not doing as good a job. And it also shows your competitors, people that you believe are your peers, and how are they doing in those areas as well. And so it's meant to really be a cost-effective tool to create the next stage, which is your planning for your strategic plan, or how you will move into the future as an institution, and what does that look like for you, and can kind of, again, go alongside the legal services that Husch has already has been providing schools when it comes to different aspects that have legal consequence as well. And so as we kind of break these down, there were really 4 core elements that we wanted to look at. Now, everyone looks at financial health. So that's not, a lot of institutions will say we don't need a tool to look for financial health. I think that what this tool does is help overlay the different areas too. So not only does it give you information that you probably already have, but kind of uses it in a different way and compares it to how the peer institutions that you've selected look in those metrics as well. And so how are you doing? And a lot of times our boards have been very thankful for that information, because they've always kind of wondered, where do we stack up, and how does that look? What does that look like? Enrollment productivity is a really important metric, of course, of your sustainable health of the institution. And so really looking at that assessment. The student success is an extremely important piece of this that a lot of people seem to leave out at times of the equation or the analysis, and making sure, again, Chuck's going to kind of go through some of these measurements, but what is the expected return on investment, especially when you look at what you're investing in, what you're spending on, how is that really helping the institution long term and helping your students succeed. And then people and process, because when we look at our financial health, obviously our students are typically driving our revenue, our people are typically driving a lot of our cost. And so, what does that look like, and where are our valuable assets within people and process? Do we have the right are we level set in terms of, are right sized in terms of our institution? And so I think those are things that if you don't continually look at it and look at your data of where we've been, because a lot of people have an idea, or they think they might know where they've been, but when you actually see it in a report, it's very helpful, and it actually brings to the surface some clear drivers of, okay, these are the things that we need to really double down on because they're working well at our institutions, and these are the things that we need to focus on, and we need to make changes. So with that, Chuck, I'm going to turn it over to you to just walk us through the data tool that is Campus Compass.
Yeah, and it's especially helpful to follow up with what Haley just said in regards to really thinking about what questions every campus should be asking, trying to answer those in a data-informed way, but then prioritizing them and helping really develop actions that can align to your most pressing needs. It's really an investment by Husch Blackwell to build out a database that contains your public-facing data. Recognize this is really how you present your accountability to the Department of Education, your accountability to Title IV, your accountability to accreditation. But also, as you know, parents and students are very astute consumers, so they can use Scorecard, they can use Navigator, but bringing in the cohort default rates, bringing in Scorecard data with iPads, the question's asked, well, can we get this data straight off iPads? You can get your data, and you can get some comparative data with peers. But if you're looking across these four elements, as you see on this tool, not only your institution, but your iPad comparators, as well as your geographical comparators. And it allows for us to run the back of the house analytics, as you can see, coming off the database in three primary ways. One is a composite snapshot of where you are. This is your data. We all recognize that iPads is an incredible source of data, almost too much data. But we also realize that there's some timing. And so taking a look at where you are point in time is important. And then, as Haley mentioned, perhaps one of the most useful tools is seeing how you compare with your peers. And again, this allows you to compare both from a geographical set of boundaries, as well as those peers that identify that you've selected that you want to have comparative data over. And then again, the strength of the Campus Compass tool is bringing that together where we can run trend data. We can run formulas like operating margins to give you a sense of your revenues over expenditures. And then we can track those up against your expenditure levels to see basically, and again, as we walk through what you receive, really the difference between your balance sheet and your operating performance. And so all of this is contained within, again, the bones of Campus Compass that then translates into what you need the most. And that's where the process really starts with you, identifying where you are. Is it a strategic governance tool for a board and a senior team? Is it a senior team tool to think about a restructuring? are you beyond concern and you need to level set it as a teaching tool to really inform all stakeholders of where you are and where you want to go? Or perhaps, and actually one of the most early mentions, do you want to innovate and know where to invest and put energy, time, and effort? And so when we say Campus Compass, we really are talking about a deliverable, very much like going and receiving your annual health check. The data that matters the most, and then as Haley outlined, the 4 elements, a much deeper dive with graphic interpretation. But as a president, I would say that one of the differences is this is not just data. It's data that's been built with a synthesis of strategy and practice to make it usable. And so you will receive a customized diagnostic report up against the 4 elements that we believe are most important to define institutional resiliency and building a sustainable future. This is a page that's just a good example of both your composite data and the comparative data that lets you look and see where you are up against your peers. There are elements of distinct analysis. One is actually on this page of a lifetime through value. Very different than a retention rate. It's a cohort-based rate of looking at who's here, who's no longer here, and what the opportunity lost is if you would be better to keep students over an 8-year period of time. So again, we will never keep all of our students, but as we used to discuss on campus, 1% gains. Every student makes a difference. The student success metrics are very important. Obviously, with more at-risk students, more Pell-eligible students, closing gaps, as you would think, and certainly reports and research will illuminate, the better we do with our at-risk students, the better we serve all students and the better our financial performance. And then the coupling of Husch Blackwell and the legal services with consulting services is really evident within the student success as new requirements are on institutions like gainful employment, financial transparency. And although, Haley, you may want to even speak to that more specifically, there will be a requirement for some institutional data. This gives you an early indicator of what you may look like.
Right. Yeah, and I think the department is still going to be giving us additional guidance. And, you know, we did a webinar on this in February and have, you know, we've seen now the date's been pushed back until October for when you have to start looking at if you fall into one of the categories to comply. But it does give you some data to really say, okay, this is an area that we need to be concerned of, and this is how we can approach that, maybe even before the reporting requirements take effect, depending on what your program is that may fall into that area.
And here's just a couple examples, right, of data that is, again, maybe looking forward to future compliance and regulatory, but at the same time gives you recognizable strategies, perhaps focus energy on even this semester as you look ahead. And then ultimately, as we think about Campus Compass, one of the real questions about resource allocation is where do we invest? Where are costs? And probably the most difficult challenge for higher ed right now is being in the people industry. Many times cost containment has a huge impact on campus communities, but at the same time may not address the structural deficits that matter most. And so again, being data informed doesn't necessarily provide all the solutions, but it's meant to be wrapped in strategy to let you know what's most important and where change can be affected most effectively now, and then as you build future models. Again, this is a much more clear picture just about your spend. Many of you are familiar, right, with the categories that we report. But at the same time, if you looked at an institutional trend line like this, you would want to ask a hard question of why did our expenses go up so much? And so again, identifying usable data, timely data, and then personalize it and customize it with recommendations and strategies that you can use.
So as we kind of launch Campus Compass, a lot of people ask us, you know, why would an institution choose to do this? I think there's a lot of different answers to that questions as to why Campus Compass. The first is really to ask yourself these important questions. The one thing that I find with a lot of schools and schools that I've worked with, unfortunately, in the last few years on school closure, is they don't ask these questions in the time in which they could make changes and survive. They've asked the questions too late. And so making sure you're asking these important questions and having some data to actually work through with your board, with your cabinets, to make sure you make strategic decisions on how you want to move forward, I think is really important. And then it also provides a backdrop for you to provide to the campus community. Everyone's so concerned about talking to the campus that we don't want to look like we're struggling or that we're having any issues, but you really are having issues, and you've had issues for quite some time. Or maybe you're not having any issues, but it also would then give you a platform to say, we need to make sure that the strong parts of our campus are not just completely underwriting every other part of our campus that doesn't make sense for us anymore in terms of the strategic direction. And so it actually can give you that data and comparators to really show these are our priorities, these are our opportunities to move forward, and this is how we want to use this data to show what we're doing as an institution. It's really for boards and presidents, and in fact, a couple of our early users of Campus Compass have been presidents that are brand new to their institution, because it's a really great tool for a new president to come in and say, they're starting to meet with all their constituencies, and at times you hear different things from different people, and so understanding what the data says and being able to ask informed questions as to things that have happened in the past is very helpful as well. Senior leadership teams, sometimes we have a CFO that is doing a fantastic job, but they are need additional help in terms of they don't have an institutional research team that can put together this data for them, and so it's a supplement to that as well. And what we were hoping to do was to offer a service that is affordable and is something that you can build upon, and not we've heard a lot of things that are cost prohibitive because they're hundreds of thousands of dollars for a diagnostic versus, because they're kind of recreating the wheel each time, versus having something like this that's a database that we can work individually with schools on. And so finally, just making sure that, Campus Compass looks at these 4 primary elements. We really talked through those, but gives you a lot of information to level set, to determine how do you want to move forward, what are our strategic priorities. And, the response we've heard for some of our board members are, this is really helpful data because we've been looking for this, but haven't found a way to bring it to the board as we're looking at how are we going to prioritize things, how are we going to move forward. So it can do, it's not just a tool for schools that are struggling. It's really a tool that can help in a lot of different areas in setting that strategy. Wouldn't you agree, Chuck?
And I originally got most excited about thinking it as a president to engage board and senior team, because again, hopefully it's described with a value of data-informed storytelling that makes it easy to understand and level set. Now, especially maybe a little bit in reflection, I really get excited about a teaching tool that really helps a campus understand what matters most. Many times we're so compartmentalized. We know communications and transparency are 2 things that people value, but perhaps on a campus may be some of the hardest things to do. This would really be a valuable way to start your year, to move through your shared governance bodies, to really help them feel engaged and informed, and then even your broader stakeholders, your donors and others.
Yeah, I think it can really be beneficial. So what do you get when you decide, and first of all, this is just informational, and so it is not, we would obviously talk to each individual client that was interested. But what you do get is a review of your public facing data and analysis. And we actually do the analysis, Chuck leads that work regarding what are options for change making, and then 4 hours of consulting support to assist in your interpretation of the data, and even talking through with stakeholders, what does this look like on our campus? And so how do we use this data really, because we don't want to just provide a report with data. We want to make sure you're using the data for the next step, which is determining how this aligns with your strategic priorities and strategic plans. And we've actually had one institution that they were out of alignment, so they wanted to bring it back into alignment based on what the data was saying, and make some changes and move forward. So I think that's going to be a really important piece of what you get.
Yeah, and on a personal level, making sure especially campus leaders can tell us what you're trying to accomplish. We want to design the engagement that's of most valuable to you. And then, as Haley mentioned, the 4 hours, we can customize that to be of direct use in any form that you think would help accomplish the objectives that you're using the data to accomplish.
So, and I do think it's important to understand this is not a one size fits all. I mean, we have a lot of, Campus Compass has a lot of not only data, but the analytics that we provide in it that is very specific to the institution, that may, manage whatever your institution is facing. The other thing that it's been used for that's been really helpful is, let's say that you're an institution that is looking to expand, and that you potentially may be wanting to partner with another institution that is struggling or potentially on the verge of closure. And so you want to understand what their data looks like as well as you're going into a merger or acquisition discussion. And how does that help inform not only your due diligence, but your planning for if you do decide to merge with that institution. So I think it can be a helpful tool in a lot of different ways, and not just, if you're in a crisis mode as you move forward.
And, Haley, I may mention, as a former client of Husch Blackwell, the value of being partnered with such a broad higher education practice. Campus Compass, again, is a preventative health check. Once those questions are answered and you prioritize your action steps, there's a series of resources that we stand ready to assist you in change management, in crisis management, in strategic governance. And as you identify those needs, we can help either meet those needs with direct scaffold supports and services, and or help you identify those needs for deeper, further analysis, and then certainly the action steps required to build out that sustainable model.
All right, Chuck. So we have one question that's come in, and I'm sorry, I'm leaning forward because I can't see very well. So can you provide us with an example of what your relationship with a campus might look like from the beginning through providing the support or the advice once the data has been delivered? So I'll let you start, and then I'll maybe add to it.
Yeah, and
it's a great question.
Certainly from an overview, but I'll be very mechanical with this. If you use the QR code and inform us of some interest, it would be followed up with a direct personal phone call. We would certainly consider the inquiry to be who's the appropriate point of contact to consider the use of Campus Compass. And then we would have some real discernment with you and your leadership team, you and your board finance chair, of what you would like to accomplish. So as we go in, to one, the pre-assessment, but also the data analysis, we're working hand in hand with you to accomplish why you would use Campus Compass. On the back end, we would engage directly. Again, it could be in a leadership retreat, it could be in a strategic planning session, it could be an opening of school, but we would use the data and the report, again, to interpret and help consider next steps. There is iterative process built in. Not only does every section have a direct, what does it mean to you? But as we work through the end of the compass, we really walk through a series of questions that you actually define, the priorities that you believe that the campus is providing. So again, it's highly personalized and customized to what you as a client would need and want to accomplish.
Right. And then, this is separate. Campus Compass and Husch Blackwell Consulting is a separate business that is wholly owned by Husch Blackwell, but at times we have added the legal support then that would be necessary depending on what options were there. But again, that's kind of just in addition to, or would be a little bit separate from the consulting services.
And, you know, as you're thinking about it from a leadership standpoint on campus, whether it be, you know, strategic finance, whether it be governance, there's just a powerful combination to provide not only the legal counsel, but the regulatory and compliance required to be effective. And as most of us recognize, much of those represent cost, and you want to do them as effectively and as efficient as you can.
Yeah. I don't see any more questions that have come in. So I think we're almost out of time. Actually, it's right at the time as well. So this is our QR code again, as Chuck indicated, that you can scan it if you'd like to and ask for a confidential and complimentary discussion just about what Campus Compass could do for your institution. So thank you, Chuck. I appreciate everything that you provided. And again, just, you know, he's been such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to working with campuses with your own background. I mean, being president at 3 different types of institutions with their own unique challenges, whether one was in growth mode, whether one was, you know, moving in a different direction, that I think gives so much to Campus Compass as well. So I really appreciate you.
And it would be really important to acknowledge, and I would say this directly to Haley and then Husch Blackwell, but there's a real intent to put usable services in an affordable way in the hands of those that need it. There's been a lot of help in building this. There's been a lot of very talented people who have worked to put a diagnostic tool together. We have to say thank you to them as well.
Yes. That's true. So, and thank you for joining us today. We hope the information was helpful to you. As a reminder, you will be receiving a certificate of attendance. It will be emailed to you along with a recording. And be sure to complete a short survey to get additional information or feedback on our future programming. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.